Welcome summoners to another RiftGuides WildRift video. Today we're going to take a look at underrated champions for the current patch. Those champions are truly just flying under the radar and people refuse to play them even though there are certain niches in which they are absolutely gloriously overpowered. But before we take a look at them, let's talk about our question of the day. What is your niche pick and against what do you pick it? Let me know in the comments below. First, let's talk about one of the biggest winners in recent memory. It's Mr. Brand. This lovely suicidal maniac is just going to unleash his combo to the enemy team, blow them up, smile while doing so while his screen turns grey. Sounds kinda weird because you're technically just jumping into the enemy team and using all your spells and then you die, but even while doing so you have insane value, which most of the other champions cannot really do, at least to a similar degree. But let's just keep the jokes aside. Brand can be played in a way that is super safe. You're basically just sitting at max range and you're waiting for the enemy melee champions to engage into you, because that would be the moment where you want to pick Brand. The more melee champions, the merrier. The moment they again get close to you or engage into you, you unleash all your spells into their faces and they all turn to living bombs. If you think about a spacing issue in which the enemy doesn't have too much space to maneuver in, every explosion will turn another person into a living bomb. I've talked about this in another video previously, but most of the time Brand is unable to apply free stacks to all people in a teamfight. You'll only have a few select people with 3 stacks and the other people will have 2 stacks. But that's not a problem because even the bomb itself, like the bomb explosion from an ally champion, will count towards the maximum stacks on you if you're getting hit. Meaning, in a teamfight scenario where the enemy is actively engaging into you, you will turn all of them into living bombs and they'll explode for a high percentage amount of their maximum HP shortly after. And this is surely not some little damage, it's quite a lot, and this champion is really underrated in that regard. So if you're interested in beating up all those bruisers and having something at your disposal that is powerful enough for even the mid lane, even the jungle role by the way, and support and AP carry, Brand is your character to choose. The next character on this list is going to be Veigar. Veigar has kind of fallen out of the meta, but is still a pick that's quite troublesome if he gets to scale. Given the solo queue environment we have and the chaos that is apparent every single game, Veigar has an easy time just capitalizing on that one. His wave clan ability to stall games is quite severe, as he's able to use his cage ability to block incoming enemy minions towards his tower and then execute them with his second ability. The damage of the second ability is absurdly high as the Veigar gains more stacks. If you utilize then your cage ability in a frequent way while putting the maximum points into it after you max your first spell, you'll realize that you have barely any downtime for that spell. Which leads me to the next thing. Veigar's most vital ability is his third ability, the Event Horizon. If this ability is off cooldown, he can do pretty much whatever he wants to do. If the ability is on cooldown, he has to, be a little bit more shy and hide away from the enemy. But generally speaking, similar to Brand, Veigar is a champion that wants to play into melee champions, or mobility-based champions. For example, if you have ever faced an Akali, you will know that Akali is quite a troublesome foe, going into a little fog cloud and killing you with a second ultimate charge. And if that's not bad enough, even hitting her just shuriken flip is going to kill you. But in a teamfight scenario where you're able to put down your cage, Akali will not be able to play. She is not allowed to do anything inside of that cage because the moment you use any kind of ability, be it a shuriken flip or ultimate ability, she'll get stunned by the cage. And if she's stunned by the cage, she'll then get killed shortly after because you can unleash all your spells into her face. Obviously, this is just a timer for the Akali to do something, but as an assassin, you're always on a timer. You need to capitalize every second in the game, and if you don't do so, you can fall victim to a mismatched time window, which Veigar can put you into, and this is something Veigar loves to do. However, don't forget, Veigar is certainly not a champion you can always pick, but a force you have to reckon with if the game is going into the later stages of the game. Another champion that has been kind of forgotten is Xayah. This lovely feather lady is an absolute demon when it comes to laning and just overall skirmishes. Her damage potential is quite high, and even her zoning potential is quite severe if you consider the lovely feathers left on the floor. If people don't posture accordingly or know how to play against Xayah, they'll be caught in the feather storm and then killed shortly after. If you also happen to go for Navori quick blades, you'll have no trouble sustaining your feathers all on the floor and being a constant threat towards the enemy, whereas they cannot abuse the cooldowns you basically enforce onto yourself. Another neat trick about Xayah is the fact that you don't really need a Stormrazor item because your champion fundamentally doesn't want to run into people, it wants champions to run into her, which if you consider this meta in solo queue is quite the nice thing to have. Plus she's also able to peel for herself with the root ability she has and the damage drawback from it, and also the basically invulnerability or rather intargetability, but basically she just can't be targeted and goes up into the air and just, drops on a huge carpet of feathers which then kills enemies. But you get the idea. She's able to peel for herself and she's able to dish out decent DPS with her attacks with steroid on a second ability, which is also a bonus damage ability. If you combine this with lethal tempo, you're not forced to go Stormrazor as a first item. Otherwise, if you go into Stormrazor as you hit the real late game of the game, you would sell the Stormrazor like you would on any other AD carry champion, because this item is basically an early game snowball item which has great early game stats, but later on it just doesn't provide you with enough value compared to other items. The next champion on this list is going to be the Mr. Bomber Ziggs. This champion has been the solid staple of basically every Asian pro team since the existence of I have no idea. This champion does crazy damage and it spikes on one item already with a Luden's Echo, and also scales heavily into the later stages of the game. This champion can deny the enemy's ability to take objectives for free with his ultimate ability and just his poke capabilities, and he can basically dictate the pace of the game while stalling the game for the enemy, while clearing sideways with his ultimate whilst chilling in mid lane being completely safe. This champion is broken. He has been nerfed quite a few times already, but it's still not enough. The AP itemization in this game is still too powerful for him, and he stays as a monstrous demon on the Rift. Items such as Luden's Echo, Void Staff, Rabadons, into then the later stages Liandry's Torment turn him into a monster that you have to deal with. Don't forget, Liandry's Torment in the later stages of the game deals roughly 10 to 12% of your maximum HP over 3 seconds. That's quite a lot of damage, and obviously we are not factoring Baron or Dragons here, but still you get the idea how broken this champion in terms of poke capabilities can be. Even also in laning, he is not the weakest if you really understand how this champion works. Those mages can never be zoned off of XP or minion gold because they can always last at them with their first ability, and the only thing you can do about this is tanking the ability, which then again might put you in a position that is not that healthy for yourself. But if you get the idea, this champion basically negates any lane and just safely scales towards his first item, dominates teamfights at that point, and just takes over the game. But the issue for this champion is an abundance of assassins, which luckily in this meta we don't have unless we are in a very unlucky solo queue match. The last champion on this list that is grossly undervalued and underrated is Caitlyn. Caitlyn's laning presence is quite domineering. For that, you have to utilize her high range and a lot of damage potential she has in a spell kit, like her first ability, or just utilizing the traps, etc., to make sure that you take over lane, because this is something you have to do on Caitlyn. Caitlyn shines the most when she's hardcore winning lane, which is the primary reason you would be picking Caitlyn. You see a matchup that you can dominate. Usually you would have those matchups if you have an enchanter next to your side, which will also double down of the lane aggressiveness. A Nami, a Janna, a Karma, a Soraka, basically any ranged champion suffices and is strong enough to make sure that you can abuse the enemy early on. And this is something you have to really do and really pay attention to. Usually enchanter players or enchanters are generally seen as weak laners, but that's not the case at all. Relic Shield, Bone Plating will turn it into tanks and then just attack enemies and outstat them. On the flip side, what you can also do is, you can pair yourself up with Thresh and Nautilus or any kind of playmaker if the person is truly good enough to pilot those champions. But generally speaking, a Caitlyn in a matchup that she's winning will turn the enemy into a very sad person because they can't do anything. Once they're on the tower, Caitlyn will have enough range to poke them out, and she can even deny certain pathways with the traps. So don't forget to max the trap ability second, because you want more of those at your disposal. The next thing that's kind of Caitlyn specific, or rather certain AD carry specific, Tristana likes to do the same, is that you want to take down the early, like the first tower pretty early, like you want to farm all plates, and then rotate to another lane to take more plates there. Usually, because it's easier to do it in the Baron lane, you would then rotate up there and just take everything there is. You just want as much gold as possible, as fast as possible, because if you are ahead and fed, you will kill anything in your way. And if you play smartly around Nimbus Cloak, Flash and Exhaust and your trap setup, killing you is really not that easy unless the enemy is already fed at that point. And that's it for today's video. If you liked the video, leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and come back tomorrow for more Rift Guides content. See you soon.